Fellow non-men friends, what would you wear in a world without men?
I'm not a poet. I'm just a woman.
Because maybe I'm not good enough.
Yes, you are.
No.
It is literally impossible to be a woman.
You have no idea what it is to be a woman.
Here's your disclaimer alert right off the bat that this video isn't about hating on men. I believe that all humans are equal beings and thus deserving of equal respect regardless of their gender, ethnicity, etc. But we also can't ignore what a huge influence men and the patriarchy in general has on women in many areas of our lives, including fashion. I'd love to tell you women live in a peaceful and safe world where they are in complete harmony with men and treated with equality and respect. But unfortunately, as we'll discuss, the statistics and studies show very different results. So this video is just a thought experiment fueled by history, research, and the thoughts of many women. And as much as I'd like to, I cannot know everything that there is to know. So if you have helpful knowledge to share about the topic, write it in the comments. And of course, let me know any other thoughts about this that you have in the comments as well. And if you want to read about this stuff, I have all of my sources linked in the video description, but enough about that. If you're keeping up with the present day, then you know some recent political events here in the US have sparked some interesting conversation online amongst women, such as most recently the 4B movement, which originated in South Korea and has begun to expand to other corners of the earth. I remember when I was a kid, we all thought we'd have flying cars by now. But instead, we're regressing back in time, and frankly, being a woman is not so fun right now, especially if you take into consideration where things are headed. I'm not saying I'm expecting men to go poof, gone. In the words of Lydia Gold in her essay World Without Men, I quote, "A world where one gender dominates another with no room for fluidity or free expression is not a world we feminists would actually want." And I'm also not here to debate what an actual world without men would be like, economically, socially, or otherwise. But I did start wondering how women would relate to fashion if the dudes did in fact disappear. In fact, I'm not the only one. There are Reddit threads dating back 10 years where women discuss this hypothetical, and there's tons of forums, articles, etc. out there. The idea of a world without men has also been explored in a wider context, most notably in books, TV shows, and movies. There's even a planet ruled by women in Rick and Morty, and a dream sequence of a similar scenario in South Park. Many have pondered and questioned about these hypothetical scenarios, and even explored the other end of the spectrum in stories such as The Handmaid's Tale. So today we're doing a little dive into the history of fashion in correlation with gender, the difference between the male and the female gaze, a bit of research because you know I love my essays, and finally my conclusion on what I think women would wear in a world without men. Let's start off with history. The history of fashion in gender, the male gaze, and the women-only utopia.
This is all I have been raised for. This is all I am. I have no other value. If I am unable to find a husband, I should be worthless.
So since I'm on a topic of a hypothetical women-only world, I figured we'd first look at how this concept has been explored throughout history. This concept has been around for a long time, usually in the format of a feminist utopia. The most recent depiction of a feminist utopia could be considered the Barbie movie, in which the Barbie women rule over Barbie world and the Kens struggle in a way that mirrors the struggles of women in the present day. In her essay, Gold writes, the late 19th and early 20th century saw the sudden flowering of feminist utopian novels in which male humans, for the most part, do not appear. So why do these writings exist in the first place? Is it for entertainment, curiosity, or to ruminate on the issues that women have faced throughout time? Gold makes a good analysis of this in her essay, stating, "The purpose of early feminist utopias is usually to convince through satire, drama, or earnest polemic that the oppression women face is one, real, and two, desperately needs to be eliminated for the betterment of all humankind." I think what a lot of these feminist stories and writings are trying to say is that the end goal for women is to live in a world in which they are free from the oppression and control brought upon them by men. I think these authors are advocating for change in the real world by imagining extreme scenarios and changes in fictional worlds. My cat just woke up. If you don't know Cool, his name is Cool, and he's an awesome cat who interrupts my videos all the time. Hi, honey. If we can imagine women thriving in a matriarchal society or coexisting with men as equals, perhaps it would encourage us to make the real world a better place for women. We strive to further improve ourselves and the advancement of civilization without hindrance, aka masculine harassment. Or that's what I'm gathering from these writings at least. The very idea of eradicating men hasn't come about due to a simple desire to do so out of pleasure or anger, but rather due to a desperate need for self-preservation. This is because in reality, women coexisting with men in a male-dominated world has thus far produced little results for the betterment of women's rights and equality, and has brought about many issues that need to be addressed. So now that we have that base covered, let's look at the history of the male gaze. But first, if you don't know anything about the male and female gaze, I do suggest you look up some visual examples and essays on it, because I can't fit the entire topic in this video.
Would you mind fastening my straps in the back?
In a nutshell, the male gaze is a term used in art, film, literature, etc. to refer to something, usually a character or a story, that depicts several types of qualities men consider attractive. So for example, a lot of Marilyn Monroe films were written with the male gaze in mind. The young single new woman in town who entertains an old married man's fantasies of an affair, or the aspiring gorgeous blonde singer who falls for a broke saxophone player, all while wearing tight dresses, lingerie, and having a rather sensual air about her. These depictions are first and foremost in existence for the male gaze. And on the other hand, we have the female gaze. Think Jane Austen. Mr. Darcy's subtle but continuous love for Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice. In Persuasion, Anne Elliot's and Captain Wentworth's long and quiet return to the love they once had. These stories do not depict their women as some body-flaunting, sensual, mysterious hot women that every man would run to in a heartbeat. No, these are awkward, shy, sometimes short-tempered or stubborn, and intelligent women. And the way the men in these stories treat their love interests is not necessarily what a man would find to be a manly approach, but rather a subtle, also perhaps a little awkward, but also adamant and respectable. A modern example of the male versus female gaze is the League of Legends video game and Arcane, the animated series based off of it. Look at the way these characters are portrayed in each. Clearly, one is for the male gaze and the other for the female gaze. So why do women need to fit within the lens of the male gaze? In her article, Dressing Through the Male Gaze, A History of Fashion, Lindsay Mallon describes this need well. Traditionally, women's social and physical well-beings have been dependent upon their desirability to the ideal bachelors, so women have bent themselves to the ideals of desirability. This dialogue is predominantly crafted through Hollywood, where men crafted legends of women who captured their attention, and on the runway where the image of desirability was interpreted season after season by a male-dominated industry. Be it classism in fashion or unrealistic body trends that have persisted and evolved throughout time, such as the unrealistic silhouette of the corset, women's ultimate goal was to appeal to the male gaze as a means of survival. Can't catch the eye of a rich bachelor? Good luck on the streets, girls. Nowadays, this could look more like, if I don't appeal to the expectations of the male gaze, I won't get respected in the workplace. Yeah, I've experienced this firsthand at corporate events. And sure, we could keep living using this to our advantage when we can. Or we could choose to dress how we want and accept the consequences for it in a man's world. What we can draw from this. This leads me to think that perhaps the way we dress in a man's world is mostly for self-preservation. Whether in a religious or work context, we're told how to dress for men. That top is too distracting to wear at church, showing too much skin leads to temptation, etc. It's all about how can we simultaneously attract men and protect ourselves from them. The conversation centers around what a woman should do to make men even more comfortable than they already are in a man's world, rather than how men can improve themselves and the system to create a safer and more inclusive world for women. When the modern man online shouts, "Your body, my choice," it's no wonder we women think about self-preservation and the many forms it takes first and foremost. It takes incredible strength and courage to dress for ourselves, paying no regard to how it fits into a man's world. Especially when every inch of our being is constantly placed under a magnifying glass for judgment. Even now as I'm making this video, so much of my thinking goes into how can I make this video in a way that men online won't attack me, while also providing support to women. How can I make this as reasonable and informed as possible without offending anyone? Spoiler alert, it's impossible. It is truly terrifying how often we need to be so careful about not getting the attention of the wrong crowd while also making our voices heard. Why we wear what we wear.
Is someone in the crowd the only thing you really see?
If you you've watched this channel for a while, you know I love looking at the why behind our fashion choices. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Yemi, and I'm low-key terrified of making this video in case it reaches the wrong audience, and I make all kinds of fashion content, so stick around and subscribe so you never miss out on a video. So let's talk about the few obvious whys behind the what. We've got concepts such as women's safety, the male gaze, work culture, religion, how we view women's bodies, and the unwritten rules of society on what a woman is and how she should act and dress. Oh, and to top it off, not only is fashion meant to be a consumerist means women have to invest in order to sustain a certain amount of respect in the social world, but it's also run by men. That's right, only around 14% of the top 50 fashion brands are run by women. Only 1 in 6 fashion graduates that are female get a job in the industry. And as a cherry on top, women spend much more money on fashion than men on average. So the next time you hop onto a fast fashion trend, just remember, it was most likely brought to you by a man. I thought an article on the thread phrases it well. While there's nothing objectively wrong with the trend of wanting to dress in subtle pink tones, we have to understand that such trends, when largely set and profited off by men, are working to reinforce the idea that women should dress to be admired, to be an object of entertainment, and not to mention light as air. So not only are we spending money from our paychecks, which by the way in the US are not equal to what our male counterparts make for the same amount of work, but the money we spend supposedly goes into investing to become male gaze eye candy. Make it make sense. So you're telling me that women have to spend their own money to look good for men? And we earn less than men for doing the same amount of work? Make it make sense. It's not making any sense. That's right, cool. You tell him. He's right here. That's another fun fact for you, by the way. Apparently, women in the US make 83.6% of what men earn. And don't even get me started on nepotism in fashion. It's all a circus now, but that's a topic for later. So not only do women have much greater pressure on how we're expected to dress compared to men, but the higher-ups pulling the strings on what fashion should look like are also men. Not saying that's all bad, by the way. There are many talented and amazing male designers out there, some of whom also clearly love designing garments for women. But it does mean that we ultimately don't have as much of a say as a collective on what women can or should wear. In my opinion, no one should be dictating this matter because fashion should, for the most part, be individualistic. Like, sure, let's maybe not wear only a crop top and panties to a corporate office, but I'm still appalled by the fact that women are expected to wear a tight pencil skirt and stilettos to be respected at their workplace. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at the other whys behind the what. Why 1, safety.
Not so fast, sweetheart.
I really wish this wasn't on the list, but it is perhaps the #1 reason why most of us dress in a way that either appeases the male gaze or completely avoids it. This topic is depressing and potentially triggering, so I'm not really going to dwell on it, and I ask you to do your own research. Point blank, women are not safe in a man's world. With our rights constantly being compromised or reduced, us not being taken seriously, and us becoming the automated blame for male violence of varying kinds on females, we're never at peace. Feeling safe in our surroundings is very important, and women often feel unsafe due to how society has raised us and men. We're told to not walk outside after sundown and not wear revealing clothes, and yet no matter if we're fully covered or wearing a short skirt, the results are still the same. You know, I could go on from personal experiences to collective ones, but I doubt we have to dwell on this collective hurt most of us have experienced in one way or another. But because of these constant reminders of how unsafe we are in a world dominated by men, we use different methods to stay safe. Baggy clothes, pepper spray, not going out after the dark, etc. The list could go on forever. The videos of New York City girls showing their subway shirts weren't there to be funny. They're there because these girls need to think about safety on public transit in daylight. And the bears versus the man decision? At worst, the bear would kill us, but it wouldn't hold malicious intentions. Either we're dinner, a threat, or just a passerby. But we're not something they want to assault, hurt, or torture for enjoyment. But we still want to wear our cute crop tops and miniskirts because we love and respect our bodies. Unfortunately, others do not respect our boundaries, and that is where the problem lies. In most but not all cases, just because a girl sees a dude with a cute butt doesn't mean that she assumes that she has the right to grab it. And that leads us to our next why. Why 2. How we view our bodies.
What do you expect us to do? We're just 3 super hot princesses, 2 circus freaks, a pregnant ogre, and an old lady.
Again, I'm generalizing over here, but we women don't tend to view our own bodies as purely sexual. We know it hurts to run in a bad bra if you're big-chested. We know the period bloat and pain. But we also love and respect our feminine features at the same time. We don't view our bodies as commodities or property. However, far too many men do. Women can be treated as a prize to be won, an object of sexual desire and nothing more, might I add, or something you want to show off to your friends like an award and throw it away once it stops being exciting and new. And once again, the list goes on. Because our bodies are constantly under the microscopic lens of men, we're constantly being judged and rated for our physical appearances. It's very unnerving and tiring to be constantly reminded of how imperfect we are, but we don't see these same judgments being passed on to men. In fact, men do face judgment, but in a very different way. For example, there are certain expectations for men to be providers, and of course there's the crushing weight of toxic masculinity. The irony in the latter matter is that it was set by men for men. Kind of feels like they decided to put a sword through everyone, including themselves. They just got a lesser portion of the sword. Sounds like an own goal to me, if you catch my drift. Either way, we don't tell men they're hoes if they have a body count. We don't usually automatically consider them completely unattractive based on physical appearances alone. Not saying this is the case for every woman, by the way. Everyone is different, and yes, physical attraction does matter in a potential partner. I'm just saying that the pressure to maintain a certain standard of a mostly unrealistic appearance is far worse for women than men. After all, the beauty and fashion industries profit mostly off of insecure women. Why 3? Religion.
My only wish is to serve the gods.
I don't really want to get into the details of this because, again, it's really depressing. Just look at what's going on in the world right now. Most religions are strongly tied to a patriarchal system. The woman serves the man, etc. But if you ask me, religion has repeatedly been used out of context to punish and oppress women. What better way to control a woman than by threatening and punishing her in a divine entity's name? And of course, there are also semi-reasonable religious dress code rules for women and men in religious spaces that are adhered to out of respect rather than shame or control, though it is a very fine line. Religions also sometimes try to affirm women's equal dignity and worth, but all too often that's not the case. And often they pay lip service to gender equality in theory, but implicitly or explicitly enforce harmful dress norms in practice. This applies to the LGBTQ+ acceptance too, by the way. If you're stating that you're an LGBTQ+ friendly space, don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. So if you're someone who frequents a church, your wardrobe probably matches what's appropriate to wear in that setting. And you'll probably skip wearing that backless top and miniskirt. Why 4? Societal rules. Work culture, societal settings, dress codes, etc.
More good women have been lost to marriage and to war, famine, disease, and disaster.
Speaking of dress codes, there's all these different dress codes and societal rules for both men and women, but I do believe the list is a little bit longer for women. What to wear on a first date, how to seem seductive but not desperate, how to talk, how to act, how to dress, and so forth. Wear high heels, a pencil skirt, and a cropped blazer to your corporate job, and maybe, just maybe, your boss will be more likely to respect you and give you that raise you asked for. Like many women, I've experienced this firsthand over and over again, and it always boils down to one thing. These societal rules were created by the people who are at the top. And who's at the top? Men. So I may want to wear a sheer nightgown, poofy skirt, corset, a flower crown, and flat Mary Janes. But if I do, it's like throwing myself to the wolves and I choose life. Why 5? Rebellion.
Speak of justice, yet you are cruel to those most in need of your help.
Silence!
Justice!
With every wave of control and oppression comes rebellion. You blame a woman's underwear in an assault case, we'll react. You tell us we dress too slutty, we'll take ownership of that word and redefine it. While I won't get into it because I frankly don't think I have the time to, female rage is very real and is also a hugely defining factor in what we choose to wear when we walk out the door. Some of us choose to dress in ways that men would consider very unattractive, while others choose to dress as girly as they want for their own sake rather than for the male gaze. I don't think there is any rage like the female rage, both in its quiet and loud moments. Hand in hand with this, though, I must note that women are not some divine beings that men should worship. No, we are not more moral or virtuous than men. We simply can't afford to make nearly as many mistakes as men because we won't be forgiven the same way that they are. The system punishes us harder based on the mere fact that we are women and thus lesser by default. History repeats itself as women rebel in various ways and reclaim fashion for themselves. Think post-World War I when women, after fulfilling usually male-dominated roles during wartime, wore practical clothing. They were soon followed by the 1920s wide-leg pants and flapper dresses, which was a huge win for women finding more androgynous ways to dress in public. In many ways, we've always pushed back over and over again, so it makes sense that some of us are tired associating our style with what's appealing to men. Malin wraps this thought up well, stating if women carved space to express themselves, the male lens was always right there, corralling the image through the lens of his ideals. If she exposed more skin, he defined how that skin was most desirable, most exotic, and most seductive. If she wants liberation and a career, the aesthetic is defined through his comfort levels. The history of fashion is a push and pull of women seeking a corner and avenue of expression and liberation, and men shape-shifting the liberations into their fantasy and ideals and comforts. My final 2 cents on this is that I think that this kind of rebellion is often joined by the LGBTQ community because they have to constantly fight gender norms and societal expectations in every aspect of their lives. What women think about women and fashion.
You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough.
Now, obviously, there's zero chance of me being able to generalize what all women think about each other and of fashion. I do, however, think that we can all agree in the most respectful way, of course, that women are beautiful. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been stunned by a woman's beauty, both inner and outer. The female gaze is, as I mentioned earlier, more focused on personality, character, and, well, genuine devoted romance. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about how... I can't use the word, so I'll just say fanfiction level excited we can be. You know what I'm saying. I think women who have healed from internalized misogyny and such can agree that a confident and happy woman is an incredibly beautiful woman. And being able to be honest with one another about our admiration is what I think makes womanhood very special. You can make another person's day with a simple outfit compliment or letting them know that you think they're beautiful. I think this feminine love actually extends to the LGBTQ+ community as well. I think there's a kind of kindred spirit, a feminine touch of kindness and empathy in each other's presence. We want to uplift one another, especially in a world where we're often trampled on. So if you ever think someone looks amazing, it takes 4 words to make their day. I love your outfit.
It's a new day, isn't it cool? And it's raining. Isn't it cool? Hi.
Am I wearing a new outfit? Yes. Is it a new day? Also yes. Leading back to the female gaze and how we view our own bodies, we women can admit it, we're alluring. But we can see each other as sexually attractive and desirable without it becoming the key element in what we see. And we can simultaneously appreciate a woman's beauty with their natural body taken into account. Think about Sabrina Carpenter. Yes, she looks hot in her many tour outfits, but we're not celebrating her as some sex goddess. No, she is a beautiful, confident woman who's wearing something that makes her feel amazing, and we're supporting and loving it without making it weird. Point being, sexy doesn't deny beauty, and a person can be beautiful in far more ways than just their outer layer. I also want to note that women can be beautiful without that beauty having to be sexual. We can appreciate one another without fixating on each other as sexual beings or having a sexual attraction to the other person. Beauty goes far beyond the body. Just remember that. And finally, I think it's important to note that women do not naturally consider femininity to be weak. But society has kind of tainted femininity to be something weak and fragile and frowned upon, especially for men and any women who wish to pursue careers or lifestyles in male-dominated fields. I believe everyone would benefit from feminine qualities like empathy and compassion, but unfortunately they have been mislabeled as undesirable qualities to possess. We've seen these ideas being confronted in our modern era, such as with the all-pink, all-female, legally blonde-inspired law firm. Over time, women have turned the tables on assumptions and generalizations about women that are considered as weak. For example, the word bimbo has been reclaimed by women. If you're going to slander them, they might as well make sure they're wearing their best outfit when you do it. I think these kinds of acts are similar to what the LGBTQ+ community has been doing for a long time, taking that slur word and redefining it in their communities. Why fight who you are when you can celebrate it? What women would wear in a world without men.
This place is gorgeous, Hal! It's like a dream.
We can take this hypothetical thought through 2 perspectives. One is a world in which men never existed to begin with, meaning that women were amongst themselves from the beginning. Another is a world in which men for some reason or other cease to exist, leaving women amongst themselves. For the first scenario, I think it would honestly be more peaceful because women wouldn't have been taught to pitch themselves against one another to appease men. Because we wouldn't have gone through all that control, oppression, etc., our mindsets would be very different from the get-go. I believe such a world would be a naturally feminine-leaning one, and its fashion would lean towards the preference of the female gaze. It would be a world where the kinder, empathetic, and nurturing qualities of women would thrive. I think in a world like this, women would have a much kinder and more relaxed approach to fashion, and individualism would thrive. Perhaps gender norms wouldn't really exist, and thus would let us explore fashion as what is best for each individual, rather than societal rules on what to wear. I think there would be a focus on comfort. High heels aren't exactly the best choice of footwear for most occasions. And because we'd be the only ones around, we'd have taught ourselves the practical skills necessary for survival. And no, we're not going to be chopping wood in a tight corset. Our outfits would be as fantastical or boring as we want, because fashion would also be used as a creative outlet. Because we wouldn't know the fear of being objectified, I think we'd be much happier to show more skin. Because instead of automatically objectifying one another, I think we'd just treat each other as regular people. I think true womanhood is to be able to respect and appreciate individualistic style, even if it doesn't align with your preferences. Seeing a woman who is happy in what she wears and how she looks is cause for celebration, not for judgment. And I think this type of world would support that thought. The second scenario would be tougher because we would be carrying with us pre-existing trauma and hurt that has been caused to us throughout history. We're used to the male gaze, we're used to competing with one another to get a better spot in a man's world, and we're used to self-objectifying ourselves and carrying our internalized misogyny with us. I honestly think we'd have very different reactions because we've been so conditioned to the male gaze and the male-dictated way of life. I think we'd initially struggle with learning the different things we need for optimal survival, not because we're not capable of it, but because most of the industries focused on building, fixing, etc. are largely male-dominated. And yes, women who usually enter those fields struggle in the industry, aren't taken seriously, and get ostracized. We're very used to being judgmental towards one another, so initially we'd probably struggle being accepting of individualism and gender fluidity in fashion, especially if you bring in religious backgrounds. I do wonder though, would we stick to these religious dress codes if there are no men to accidentally tempt by showing your shoulder or a quarter of a thigh? And also, would religious habits themselves get reshaped because we realize there is no man to hide ourselves away from for the sake of purity? I think we'd eventually find our way to a place of comfort and safety where women can wear as little or as much as they want. No matter which world I would be in, I think you would often see me frolicking in flowy dresses and comfy flats, and probably maybe some sheer stuff too. Because if I'm not worried about my safety, why wouldn't I wear that beautiful sheer gown that makes my skin look soft and angelic? Like, come on. I'm not missing out on my cute fabrics if I know I'm safe. I think gender fluidity would also find its way in such a world, because if we're not competing for the attention and adoration of men, does it really matter what each person wears? I think not. Conclusion. Though I've been talking about a hypothetical world, it's been refreshing thinking back about everything that makes us women and celebrate it. Though we struggle immensely in a society that caters to men, I find so much love and joy in womanhood itself. And being able to look back at all the amazing women in history, in the past, the women that I know in my life personally, etc., it just makes me so proud of us all. Right now, I'm really missing all the amazing, wonderful, and inspiring women in my life, and I am sending a loving hug to all of you. I need a cat to hug. He's not a woman, but he is a woman's best friend, a kitty, and I love him. He's really good to hug. With that, I thank you for sticking around and listening to me, and I'll see you next time.